Okay, so as far as AEW Double or Nothing, the event is coming at us next week, Sunday the 29th. So what have you thought about the overall build thus far?
I think for some stuff, it's been pretty good. The CM Punk Adam Page stuff, I think has been very good. I think for the most part, they've done an okay job with the Owen tournament. I'm not sure how I feel about the Jokers in hindsight, but overall, I think they've at least treated that with some respect. Totally digging the Rosa Deeb stuff. Now, that said, though, I'm not at all interested in the triple threat match for the tag titles. And I mean that with due respect to all the teams, but to me, I think that FTR versus Jurassic Express should be the tag team match, right? I mean, it's the best two tag teams in AEW.
Right.
I'm also very all in, so to speak, and excuse the pun, regarding the Young Bucks versus the Hardys. But I'll admit, I think they could have done way better on that build. It was like, to me, and this is sort of an AEW thing. It's something I critique them about all the time, is that they'll leave these breadcrumbs, and then all of a sudden they'll go from 0 to 60 like the next week. So all of a sudden it's like, we're going to challenge you guys. And it's almost like I would have liked to have seen a bit more of a gradual buildup with that. Now, that said, I'm still excited for the match, but they do that on occasion. It's almost like they rush things through. Again, House of Black, Death Triangle, it's been okay, but again, I'll admit, I'm not I think part of my problem is that I'm not invested in some of these storylines. So to me, it's like whatever, right? So House of Black, Death Triangle is one of those storylines where I'm like, I mean, it'll be a good match, but I really don't care, right? With all due respect. And then I know I've gotten some heat over this from some people, but like MJF Wardlow. So the build has been very good. Okay. I'm not going to knock the build, but I don't care because if you think about it, okay. So AEW is going to be 3 years old this Wednesday. Okay. So let's talk about MJF's major opponents in AEW. Okay. Cody Rhodes. What do we see there? 10 lashes, right? Chris Jericho, what do we see there? Labors of Jericho. CM Punk, what did we see there? Has to go through the pinnacle. So Wardlow, we're seeing a combination of those three things. And look, I get it. Like Ric Flair used to do this all the time with the Four Horsemen, but I think it's just, I don't know, like for whatever reason, because it's in isolation, I would love this, but looking at the whole, I can't get into it because it's like, yeah, I've already seen this. So, so there's an example of a build that I think has been very, very good, but I just don't give a crap. I really don't care about the match. And again, I understand I'm probably on an island with that. So, but again, like to your question though, or to your point, the build has been very good to that. So again, overall, if I had to grade it, I would probably give them a solid B+, maybe an A- on the build to the pay-per-view.
Do you think that the announcement of the Forbidden Door event next month has had some kind of an adverse effect on the buy rate for this one?
I don't think so. I think that it's hard to say because it's AEW fans, right? Who are quote unquote a bit more hardcore than your average fan. So I don't think it's affected the buy rate. I might argue that the WWE events around that time are probably affecting the buy rates to Forbidden Door. So I'm going to say most likely not. Like when I heard about the Forbidden Door, and I knew that this pay-per-view was coming up, it's not like I was like, oh, I'm not going to watch, Double or Nothing. I'm going to watch Forbidden. I'm going to watch both. So, and I would assume that most wrestling fans who are into the AEW product are probably thinking the same thing.
So looking at the card, they have the 6-man tag that you previously mentioned, Death Triangle against House of Black. This hasn't been given very much attention on Dynamite lately, but it's been all over Rampage. Firstly, what have you thought about Malachi's run thus far in AEW?
Underwhelming. And it's like in the ring, they're great. I have no problems with House of Black in ring, but it's the stuff around it that I've had a problem with. And because I don't like that, I just don't pay attention. I've said this before on different podcasts. Whenever House of Black comes on, that's a bathroom break for me. Like, I just don't care to hear, whenever House of Black comes up on a promo, it's a bathroom break. If I come on, that Malachi Black, Buddy Matthews, Brody King versus Pac, Penta, and Ray is going to be a sick match.
Deliver, yeah.
But and I like the fact that they have kept it, the promos minimal. But honestly, again, it's just not a match that I'm overly interested in. Compared to, say, Jericho Appreciation Society versus Eddie and his group in the Blackpool Combat Club. I care about that one. So I want to see it, even though I know that match may not be as good as House of Black versus Death Triangle. Right? Makes
sense, yeah. Do you, having said that, do you think that this is a match that could have been used on the buy-in rather than the main card?
That's tough. You know what? I based on what I'm seeing on the buy-in so far, and of course card subject to change, this is to me a pay-per-view worthy match. Now, again, keeping in mind that I'm not into it, so I'm a little biased about it, but I mean, just being realistic about it, that's going to be a great match. So I don't have a problem with it being on the main pay-per-view, given what's currently on the buy-in. But again, at the end of the day, it's not a match that I'm, overly excited about.
Mm-hmm. So the Young Bucks and the Hardys, of course, you mentioned as well. They'll also do battle in what is being labeled a dream match, even though I believe they have had a previous match in Ring of Honor. This is, of course, on a much grander scale. Given the age of the Hardys and their longevity in the business, do you expect this one to be like most other Bucks matches in terms of overall craziness?
Yeah, I would be shocked if it's not, to be honest. Now, don't get me wrong. I think they'll be safe. Well, okay, I think Jeff is a freaking maniac, but that's a whole other discussion. I think they're going to be as safe as possible, but I also think that, yeah, they're going to pull out all the stops because, it is, it's old school versus new school. It's the mentors versus the mentees. It's a match that, the cool part about this match, okay, let's talk about the quote unquote insider fan. Okay. And I don't mean that with any disrespect, but let's talk about that. Okay. Sure. So if you've been following pro wrestling and if you've been following the Young Bucks, okay, that the Young Bucks, sort of patterned themselves after the Hardys. Okay. So cool little Easter egg there. So what you have is a match with a bunch of layers. So you have old school versus new school. You have arguably one of the greatest teams from the 20th century versus arguably one of the greatest teams from the 21st century. And if you know about that, the Young Bucks, the Hardys relationship, if you know, and that's kind of cool. And that's why, even though I haven't been impressed with the build for this, I'm still excited for this match because if you know, right?
Mm-hmm. And I mean, given the nature of both this match and the tag title match that you mentioned earlier, this one is not for the titles, but it seems like it seems like a much more hyped match than the tag title match. And given that, I think that it would do a lot of good to have this match being for the titles rather than the actual title match. It just seems like that's such a minuscule match in comparison.
Sadly, you're right. I mean, this match, the Hardys versus the Bucks, has a lot more story, gravitas, weight, whatever you want to call it, compared to Jurassic Express versus Team Taz versus Lee and Strickland. And again, I mean that with much love and respect, but I've been thinking for I even said when I was talking about the Owen, for example, I even said, nope, Dax can't win. So that way he and Cash can challenge Jurassic Express at Double or Nothing. So I've been saying Jurassic Express FTR, that is a match that you want to see at this pay-per-view. So yeah, I mean, to your point, I am way more interested and way more invested in the Hardys versus the Young Bucks than I am with the tag title match. And look, I get it. Sometimes that happens. Look at Rock Hogan, right, from WrestleMania.
Yeah, exactly.
But I mean, they could have had 2 kick-ass tag teams matches on this card, no problem. And you want to talk about buy-in matches. I would have rather seen Team Taz versus Keith Lee and Swerve Strickland on the buy-in as opposed to having them on the pay-per-view. Because to me, that match, again, with due respect, is not a pay-per-view worthy match.
For sure. And of course, moving along to the MJF and Wardlow storyline, you of course been very vocal about your displeasure about the build thus far, including at the start of this show. So I wanted to ask you though, has AEW kind of painted themselves into a corner in terms of booking this match where Wardlow has to win to be able to get an AEW contract? Because AEW is known for sticking to their stipulations. Have they not telegraphed the outcome in that sense?
Man, you would think so. And then like the Cody thing happened a few years ago. That said, though, I agree. I think you got to have Wardlow win this match. I'm not okay. It would be smart for AEW to book Wardlow winning. I'm not saying that they couldn't book MJF, but I think if you book MJF to win, I know you can eventually figure out a way to get out of that, but man, I think the heat would be a little too much on that. Like you got to get the fans have been waiting to pop for Wardlow winning this and finally getting out of his contract. So yeah, I think you have, and look, it's not a bad thing that it's obvious, but I think you got to have Wardlow winning this match.
Right.
And if you want to do some really, really long-term fantasy booking, if MJF ever, and contract talks aside, but if MJF ever wins the AEW championship, you've already got a built-in challenger with Wardlow, right? Moving forward.
Yeah, that's exactly the point I was going to make. I think he could definitely get his win back once he eventually holds the title.
Yeah, absolutely.
No problem there. So there's another multi-person match on the card. It's called Anarchy in the Arena, which I was positive that this was going to be a stadium stampede, and I think they've already teased that as well on this past week's Dynamite. Thankfully, it didn't go that route, but what are you expecting out of this match?
Chaos, just absolute chaos. And it's smart that they're making it a stipulation gimmick match, because that there's no way the referee is going to be able to take care of that. So just have the referee in there to count the pin. I'll admit though, I'm kind of torn. You would think that Eddie and Santana and Ortiz and the BCC would win, but I wouldn't be shocked if the Jericho Appreciation gets the win here, leading up to a final showdown with Chris Jericho and Eddie Kingston somewhere down the line, because that's really what it feels like for me. So I'm okay. Let's come back to one of your statements. I'm so glad it's not a stadium stampede, because I am not the biggest fan of gimmick matches. I kind of thought it was going to be a blood and guts match, to be honest with you. I thought that would have made more sense. And think about it now that Blackpool Combat Club has Regal. Now, granted, I know he's not allowed to say War Games, but imagine if he could come up with a way to say blood and guts, I think that'd be pretty funny. That said, though, yeah, I think this is gonna be a chaotic match. I'll admit, most people know that I am not a gimmick match guy, but this is actually one match that I'm absolutely looking forward to, because I'm so invested in this storyline. And I think I'm on an island here, because I'm Team Jericho all the way here. So I just love it. Jericho, his promo on Wednesday, I thought was some next level stuff. The way that he used his the material for his podcast with Regal in that promo. I was like, wow, that's insane. So I'm gonna pick the Jericho Appreciation Society winning, even though I don't think they will. I'm picking with my heart here. And oddly enough, I think it's gonna be Eddie Kingston who blacks out in some sort of submission move, like the Walls of Jericho or something like that. That's what I want to see anyways. But then that would lead to the ultimate showdown with Eddie and Chris Jericho somewhere down the line.
It's funny that you say that, because that's who I'm also picking, Jericho Appreciation Society to win, because I thought that they kind of brought Eddie back a little too prematurely. Fireball to the face, and I think that may play into the finish with Jericho's finisher being an elbow to the face.
Yep. And he is the Wizard now, so he could throw another one. So
exactly.
I'll be honest with you, I don't get the Wizard thing, but whatever. That's one where I kind of thought, I'm not sure if I like that gimmick, but let's run with it for a while.
So the Owen Hart tournament finals haven't been fully decided yet. The final matches are to take place this week on Dynamite, and I think the Ruby Soho and Chris Statlander matches on Rampage. What matches are you expecting out of each of them in the finals?
I think for the men's, it's going to be Samoa Joe versus Adam Cole, and I think Adam Cole wins. And then for the women's, I think it'll be Toni Storm getting her comeuppance on Britt Baker to get to one side of the finals. Now, the Ruby Chris Statlander thing, that's interesting, but I think I'm probably going to pick Ruby Soho on that. And then Toni Storm goes over Ruby Soho at Double or Nothing.
Right. Yeah, because see, I was thinking with Shida, when Shida was still involved in the tournament, that it would be they were going the route of a rematch from last year's Double or Nothing with Shida and Britt Baker in the finals. I wonder if that had played in with Shida getting her win back, of course, and I wonder if her absence from this tournament has played into them changing the outcome.
You know what, I've kind of leaned towards Toni Storm winning this thing the whole way. In fact, I'll be honest with you, I was actually kind of surprised that Red Velvet lost to Chris Statlander because, like, if you had Red Velvet winning, you would have like a heel face dynamic, right? So in this case, you've got kind of two baby faces. So it's like, all right, it'll be an interesting match, and I like both Ruby and Chris. Yeah. But I was I was a little surprised that Red Velvet didn't win that, and especially too knowing that Chris had just been a like a replacement for Shida. Right. So but yeah, like I still think it's gonna be Toni Storm, Ruby Soho with Toni winning, but I think Ruby will give her a good match, and I think that's what Toni needs.
It does kind of make sense in the idea that it is a tournament, like anything can happen. So it kind of makes sense that it would be two baby faces in the semifinals, whereas if it were heel face, one side of the bracket is already a baby face, so you're getting heel. Right. I feel like they went the opposite route and made it a little more unpredictable in that sense.
That said, a Kyle O'Reilly Adam Cole final would be very interesting, and those two, like from their matches in NXT. Those two can bring it, right?
Yeah, and it's interesting you say that too, because I think that's exactly what's going to happen. I think
okay.
Firstly, with Kyle being the one Canadian left in this tournament, winning the Owen Hart tournament, and also because Samoa Joe is wrapped up in this thing with Jay Lethal and Sanjay, and I think that may play into him getting eliminated.
Right. Like, and that's why, like, even if you have Samoa Joe versus Adam Cole, that's where I thought Adam Cole would win because of that storyline with Samoa Joe and like the three dudes. So, but again, a Kyle O'Reilly Adam Cole match would be very interesting. Very interesting.
Okay, so they've been doing a lot of wrestling where they have a men's and women's version of each match. A lot of this is a common theme in wrestling. Do you think that they really need two of everything? Like, because personally, I liked when they did the women's pay-per-view in WWE, the Evolution pay-per-view. It seemed like a very separate thing, and it felt more special. But do you think they need two of every common thing?
You mean like titles and stuff like that?
No, like not just titles, but like two, for instance, two tournaments, two Money in the Banks, two Hell in a Cell, two ladder matches.
That's a weird question to answer. My initial answer is yes, but I guess my more detailed answer would be, like, let's say you had and let's use WWE because AEW I don't think is ready for this yet. Right. But like let's say you had a men's, like the men's, and I'm using air quotes here, people. So men's Money in the Bank was like, let me rephrase that. Let's say Money in the Bank was a men's thing. Have something else for the women. Something not Money in the Bank. Let's say, again, for like Extreme Rules. So that's the women's match. You know what I mean? Yeah. And so I think that way it makes things more special when you have like an Extreme Rules match. Like, automatically it's a women's match. You don't have to say it's a women's match. You know what I mean? And I think that's where, like you make things unique. I'd rather have the uniqueness. Now, that said, though, again, I'm not going to say that they shouldn't have like a men's title or a women's title or a tag title, whatever. Yeah. But yeah, like I would like to see like kind of to your point, Evolution was a unique pay-per-view. Would love to see that kind of thing, not just in AEW or WWE, just in wrestling in general, right? I don't think you have to have, the like for like thing. So like, ladies Hell in a Cell, men's Hell in a Cell. No, make something different up, right? Make it unique and make it like special to watch those things.
Mm-hmm. And so focusing back on the pay-per-view, the tag title match, you obviously just voiced your displeasure in that regard as well. Do you anticipate a title change here?
No, I don't actually. Like, I mean, my issue too with this is that, Lee and Swerve are two singles wrestlers that they put together, right? And in essence, so are Starks and Hobbs, right? Like, they're Team Taz. Yes, they're in a faction, and they do the occasional tag team here, but I mean, Starks is, the FTW champion or whatever you call it, right? And Powerhouse Hobbs has been doing singles matches. So like, I think Jurassic Express wins. What I'm actually very curious about is to see what happens with Christian Cage, because they've been sort of teasing this weird, heel turn thing, right? But yeah, like, again, all joking aside, like, I think this will be a good match. It'll deliver in the ring. It'll be chaotic. It is what it is. But to me, just, I don't see Jurassic Express losing the belts unless Christian Cage messes something up.
For sure. So of the two women's title matches on the card, I don't think anybody is questioning which one Dan Lebransky is least looking forward to.
He's not the biggest Thunder Rosa fan, so no, I'm kidding. Dan, I'm kidding.
Do you see either belt changing hands?
No. And did they not change it to Jade Cargill versus what's her name, Anna Jay or something? Yeah. Oh man, that. So did you watch Rampage on Friday?
I did. Yeah, I did.
Okay, so like, they're getting like the baby faces are getting beat up by Jade and the baddies, and I'm like, all right, who's the third person that's gonna come in? And then all of a sudden, here comes Anna Jay, and I'm like, no. So yeah, if Jade loses that belt, I would be very, very, very surprised. I think Jade wins that pretty much in a squash. And like, here's the thing, Jade has been getting better. I'm not going to deny that, but like, Anna Jay is still pretty young herself. So you've got two relatively green wrestlers in the ring, and like neither of them is a ring general. So like, I really hope to God that they keep that one short, because that could potentially expose both women pretty badly. But yeah, Jade wins that in a heartbeat. And then I don't see Thunder Rosa beating Serena Deeb. But that said,
Serena Deeb beating Thunder.
Sorry. I don't see Deeb beating Thunder Rosa, but it'll be a great match. And if Deeb did win, I wouldn't have a problem with it, because I really like Serena Deeb.
And then, of course, rounding out the card is a big one for the world title. What have you thought of the build thus far?
I have actually liked this build a lot. And I guess depending on your viewpoint, this could be potentially the culmination of the entire CM Punk return. That said, I would really like to see Adam Page retain. I think he's starting to find his stride as the world champion. His characters certainly taking it up a couple of notches in terms of intensity, but I have a suspicion that like Punk wins this, because that's the redemption story. And again, fantasy booking way down the line, I think he drops it to MJF, and there you go. And again, assuming all contract talks and stuff is all figured out. Right. But I think CM Punk will eventually drop it to MJF, and MJF carries that belt, like he can. I think that he can, and we'll see where it goes from there.
Does it surprise you that they didn't play into each guy's character more, with the straight edge guy against the heavy drinker?
Had this been pandemic or not pandemic, I would have said yeah. But when the pandemic started, they really stopped all that, like the beer drinking gimmick where he was grabbing beers from the crowd and stuff. So I'm not shocked, because again, I think the pandemic hurt that. Now, that said, if we weren't in a pandemic and he was still doing that, absolutely, you got to talk about that.
Yeah. Okay. And one last question before we wrap. So the Forbidden Door event coming up next month. Any predictions or matches you'd like to see at the event?
Yeah, that's so many. Wow. I mean, like I'll stick with one that everyone's talking about because I just think from an in-ring perspective, it would be disgustingly good. Zack Sabre Jr. versus Bryan Danielson are arguably two of the best technical wrestlers on the planet right now. That would be a sick match. Ishii versus, if Miro's back, I would love to see Miro versus Ishii. I think most people, Dan would love that match for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, like so many, like, let's say, the Mox Osprey match was pretty good. Wouldn't mind seeing a rematch with those two. Young Bucks versus, who are the champs again? Young Bucks versus, yeah, thank you.
Or sorry, no, you mean the New Japan champs.
New Japan champs, yeah.
Sorry, I slipped my mind as well.
But yeah, like I would love to see a match between like those two. I think Young Bucks have that experience with New Japan. And hopefully there's no heat there anymore. Yeah. Oh my god. Yeah, but there's just so many, like we haven't even talked about Okada or Tanahashi, who are people want to see those guys.
Will Ospreay.
Yeah, exactly. Will like Juice Robinson just recently won the United States Championship. You've got Ishimori, who I think it's Ishimori who's like the junior heavyweight champ. Yeah. So I mean, they got some ballers there. It's the Bullet Club that are the
Bullet Club. Okay.
Yeah, like and think about it, like Young Bucks versus I think it's Fale and Chase Owens. It's kind of like, again, the old school Bullet Club versus the new school Bullet Club. You know what I mean? So just so many matches that you could have that are pretty exciting. Like, but yeah, I'm gonna stick with Zack Sabre Jr. Bryan Danielson. I think that match would be sick. And I would absolutely buy the pay-per-view on that match alone.